bid to end the stalemate. Eskom revised its initial offer of no increase for this year to 4.7%. NUMSA and Solidarity met with the power utility last week in a second round of talks initiated following intervention by Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan. Workers last week rejected the increase of 4.7%. Initially, the labour unions wanted a 15% increase, but have now dropped this to 9%. The electricity grid has been constrained, with Eskom implementing load shedding, citing the effects of the protest action by workers. The talks are expected to continue until Friday. Well, for more on this, we cross live to our reporter Mbongeni Mutwa, who is in Woodmead for us. Mbongeni, what's the latest on the talks?
Well, the latest is that after Eskom tabled their revised offer of 5% now, the unions did try to have a caucus, a joint caucus to, discuss their joint position going forward. It was brief, then they broke, and then they came behind me here to have lunch. It was quite early. It's the first time we've seen them coming out for lunch so early. And then we understand that after this, they are going to go back now and have or continue with the joint caucus. But earlier we did manage to hear from the Deputy General Secretary of NUM, who gave us their immediate reaction that they reject this offer that is on the table. And right now, let's get the reaction of NUMSA, which is the second biggest union at Eskom. 5% now. Your response?
Well, I think we're sitting on a crisis. We are in the media for wrong reasons. I mean, Eskom board had an opportunity to interact with the joint positions, unified positions of union. I think we are faced here with a serious challenge of a failure to have pragmatic leadership. If we had pragmatic leadership, I don't think we would have Eskom trying to come and do a horse trading with us. They would have reflected comprehensively to all issues that we have put on the table, and that they would not give us 5%, which they know that we will reject it. I mean, there's no union that's going to accept this 5%. And the difficulty is the fact that we gave the board the cost drivers that need to be addressed, and if those cost drivers are being addressed, Eskom will be in a better position. Its balance sheet would improve such that it can give workers a better increase. For instance, we said, if you're looking on the cost of primary coal from 2008 to 2015, you're sitting with a situation where basically private sector that runs cost-plus mines of Eskom, they've made for themselves, secured for themselves money of an increase during that period which amounts to about 300% when inflation was at about 74%. I mean, I've listened to SABC Jonas speaking nonsense, calling for privatization of Eskom without realizing that if you're taking primary coal, basically there is a private sector role that is making money, that has captured Eskom. And I don't understand what is the issue. I mean, these are white monopoly companies, mines that have basically Exaro and all of them, they are making money out of Eskom. We're saying that must be addressed. Secondly, we're saying disconnection of the IPPs that is basically destroying Eskom market, Eskom sales, must be addressed. We know that with the investment of about 250 billion we have done, we can produce a kilowatt from our power stations, which we have, for 42 cents. These IPPs being connected, they are basically costing around 214 cents and more. And yet Eskom will sell at a loss of about 80 cents. In 2016, with those that were connected, Eskom lost about 9 billion. That's not a small issue. It's a fundamental issue, and it is reckless that the minister and everybody else would have connected these IPPs when in fact there's absolutely no demand if you compare when IPPs were conceived and now. And not that we're against energy mix. We support that there should be an energy mix, but it must be afforded by the country. It must be a just transition to retain those 92,000 jobs that are about to be lost as a result of these decisions. But also, Eskom, if these IPPs were not connected, it will actually be breaking even. It will be able to make money. We're saying those issues must be addressed. I mean, the cost overruns in Medupi and Kusile, which Cat Blanche has just been exposing, If we were to basically put foot down and stop that corruption and complete those capital build projects, Eskom balance sheet would basically improve. Top executives from 2001, when Eskom was its best performing kind of capacity, it had about 80 top executives. Today it's got about 600, and these people are expensive. We're saying cut them to 200. You will strengthen your balance sheet. You will retain existing workers. And we think that we're plunged on this crisis purely to justify, as Mcebisi Jonas would have said, let's privatize Eskom, let's break it up. That's the mission.
Just quickly, last question. What is the path forward for you right now? The Minister of Finance was in London last week doing a roadshow with investors. He made it clear that government does not have money to sponsor Eskom to give you the wage demand that you want. So Eskom says we can only afford 5% for this year. How do you see the path forward for these negotiations now?
I think one thing that we must communicate, and I think the ball is in the hands of the board and the two ministers who basically have a role to give life to these institutions. The cost drivers have just unpacked. If you were to sort out what we're raising and take actions in line with what we're suggesting, Eskom will have a better balance sheet. And if, as we speak, the feedback and the message we're receiving, they say, look, we're willing to engage on all the issues you raised, then we're saying it's time to be pragmatic. Accept, therefore, that indeed you will be positive in addressing those issues. And if you were to be positive, you can be in a position to give a better increase than 5%. And we're even saying to them, we're willing to engage and have a 3-year agreement, but you must buy it, because if workers must sacrifice, it means they must be guaranteed of what they will get into the following year. But we also need to have a clear settlement this year in the best interest of workers.
Mr. Jim, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And good luck going forward.
Thanks very much.
Well, it's very important right now. You heard Mr. Jim now. It's very important to go back to what Mr. William Mabapa, the Deputy General Secretary of NUM, which is the biggest union Eskom, said to us earlier on, where he said that now they want to say to Eskom, okay, let's forget about 3 years, let's go back to 1 year. Apparently what he didn't say to us, what he did mention, which we're now picking up, on the sidelines, is that last week, after the Minister of Finance was seen in London, saying it clearly that the government does not have money to give for Eskom salaries, it sounds like the workers at Eskom, the NUM members, the ones that actually 3 years ago threatened to down tools, shut down the grid, and that secured them the double digit. Apparently now the talk among them is that the NUM should just forget about the 3 years. It must go back to double digit, which is now 12%. And then if Eskom doesn't want to give that, they are willing to down tools as early as next week, Monday. It's back to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Mbongeni. That was our reporter, Mbongeni Motwa, reporting on the Eskom wage talks.